To grasp where the knot comes from, we need to look back to the 17th century. In those days, ships didn't have radar, GPS, or speedometers. Yet for survival, knowing how fast you were moving was crucial. Without that information, sailors couldn't determine the distance they had covered, increasing the risk of drifting off course in open waters. To solve this problem, they invented a clever and straightforward tool known as the chip log. Here's how it functioned. Sailors used a small piece of wood shaped like a pie. This piece of wood was connected to a long rope. This rope had real knots tied into it at carefully measured intervals, spaced precisely 47 feet and 3 inches apart. When it was time to check the speed, a sailor would toss the wooden piece overboard. It would stay nearly stationary in the water as the ship moved forward, causing the rope to unroll. At the same moment, another sailor would turn over an hourglass, usually set to 28 seconds, the standard at the time. The sailor handling the rope would let it slip through his hands, counting each knot as it passed. When the sand ran out, he would call out to stop. If, for example, 10 knots had gone by, the vessel was traveling at 10 knots. That's the literal origin of the term, so even today we use the word knot because centuries ago sailors were quite literally counting knots tied into a rope. But here's the big question: why were the knots spaced exactly 47 feet apart? Why not 10 feet or 100? On land, we measure distance using statute miles, where 1 mile equals 280 feet. That unit traces back to the Romans and was based roughly on 1,000 paces of a soldier. 1,000 paces means 1,000 double steps, 1 full stride with both feet, and each of those paces was around 5 feet. So 1,000 paces times 5 feet equals around 5,000 feet. Of course, walking isn't an option at sea. Sailors rely instead on the Earth's latitude and longitude. Recognizing that the planet is essentially spherical, they worked with its geometry. A circle is divided into 360 degrees, and each degree can be split into 60 smaller units called minutes of arc. One of such a unit corresponds to 1 nautical mile. So 1 nautical mile is 1 degree out of the 360 divided by 60. If a captain needed to travel 1 degree north, he immediately knew that meant 60 nautical miles. And this connects back to the rope. Sailors carefully worked out the measurements and found that spacing the knots 47 feet apart, combined with the 28-second timing interval, made the count match the number of nautical miles travelled per hour. Because the question sailors needed to answer was, how many nautical miles are we travelling per hour? To measure speed, you have to divide distance by time. 1 nautical mile equals 6,076 feet. That's the distance. And 1 hour equals 3,600 seconds. That's the time. So 6,076 feet divided by 3,600 seconds equals 1.6 feet per second. The clock was 28 seconds long, so 1.6 times 28 equals 47 feet. Since the knots were spaced every 47 feet apart, if 1 knot had passed during 28 seconds, you were travelling at 1 knot, so 1 nautical mile an hour. In conclusion, a nautical mile is 1 degree of Earth divided by 60, and that's 6,076 feet. If you travel 6,076 feet in 1 hour, you travel 1 nautical mile an hour. Measuring 47 feet, a knot, in 28 seconds instead, is an easier and shorter way to measure how many nautical miles you travel in an hour. In other words, a knot isn't just an arbitrary unit of speed, it's directly tied to the geometry of the Earth itself. Click the video on your screen right now and I'll explain another everyday mystery you've wondered about your whole life, but never thought to look up.